Okay, hi everyone. I'm Maggie Ostara. I'm delighted to be here today. I want to invite you, if you're here with us on Zoom or if you're joining us via Facebook Live, that you go ahead and just, say hello, put in your name, let us know that you can see us and you can hear us. That's always really helpful. And do let us know, like last night I was teaching a master class and I don't know what I did, but I muted myself and I am all of a sudden went, oh my goodness, nothing is happening. So anyway, so do let me know if that happens. And we'd just like to hear from you and like to know where you're from. If you want to put in your human design type, that would be great also. And then you can just be including questions as we go along, ahas, takeaways, any of those type of things as we go, because it's one of the ways that we get connected with each other. And then I also want to let you know to, if you're on Zoom, to make sure to send to attendees as well as panelists so we can see each other. Because Alina, you sent to panelists. I'm the only one who can see what you wrote. Um, so, so we want everybody to be able to see your comments. All right, so some of you may know me. I may be brand new to some of you. So I want to just tell you a little tiny bit about myself today, why I'm here to talk to you about igniting your feminine sovereignty. And then we're going to dive in. I have a series of slides and I'm super excited to be bringing to you some material that I think can really help you in this time. So I am a human design specialist. I have been really devoted to human design for about the last 3 years. And I feel like I've been on a really accelerated path with human design. And part of the reason for that is that I have about 30 years in the realm of consciousness, if you will, diving into many, many different ways of looking at consciousness, whether that was for me as a professor, a women's studies and gender studies professor, which was my very first career at Columbia University, or whether it was helping people to set up small businesses, which I've done for a lot of different venues. I did it in network marketing. I did it as a business coach. And that also takes a lot of development of our own capacity to be visible, to own our value, to be able to show up and be good communicators and good listeners and so on, as well as the mechanics really of building a business. I've also been a healer. I'm a certified clarity breathwork practitioner. I'm about to undertake a 200-hour Kundalini yoga teacher training, which has a lot to do with breath and mantra, as well as energy. And now I'm a human design specialist. And I feel that the human design really kind of goes hand in glove with what I've done over so many years. And it's elevated my ability and clarified my ability to be able to support people to understand a lot of what we're talking about in the realm of consciousness, because it's really a map. It's a map to our soul curriculum. It's a map to our evolutionary process, both as a humanity, the chart as a whole, and also in our own individual charts. So, yeah, so that is the promise of human design, I think. And so I will be including that. And it's definitely embedded in my understanding about feminine sovereignty. And so I want to go ahead and dive in. And I'm just going to say hi to Alina and to Terry and Teresa. And there's a whole bunch more of you there on Zoom. So I'm going to say hi to you, even though you're not coming on. All
We
right.
do have some people that have said hi on Facebook too.
Oh, great. Hi on Facebook, whoever you are. Hi, B. Welcome, welcome. So please do, engage and comment and so on. It's one of the ways that you can actually get a lot more out of participating in a masterclass like this is by, by interacting and by putting in your takeaways and your ahas and your questions, because it means that the material, you're taking it into your system and you're digesting it already and you're starting to integrate it rather than just being a passive observer or even more multitasking and barely listening. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And so today our topic is how to ignite your feminine sovereignty, keys to reclaiming your power and manifesting your purpose with human design. So what is the context that we're in right now that is making this so important? Let's just tune into that for a minute. So In our world today, challenges abound. You can, if you agree with me, you can put yes in the comments or in the chat. Just challenges abound. Whether that started with you from COVID, we've had lots of earth challenges. I live in Northern California. We had over 700 fires, started with lightning strikes a little over a month ago. We've also had all kinds of uprisings that have been revealing the systemic and systematic racism that really our culture is built on and our economy is built on. And so we're waking up on another level to that. All of us who haven't necessarily been on the front lines of that the way BIPOC people have been. And so there's, so many different things that have been arising and the political situation. So kind of anywhere you look, there's people who are, don't have their jobs anymore, or their jobs have changed. Maybe you've got kids at home when you didn't used to have kids at home. Maybe you have people in your environment who have gotten sick with COVID, because unfortunately there are people for whom that's true. Some of us are just suffering with isolation, not feeling like we have our companions. Some of us are suffering from a lack of touch if we don't have, family members that we live with that we get to hug on a regular basis. There's lots and lots of different things that are creating stress for us. And so I know here, we had COVID, and my relief, I lost my medicine, which is really dancing a couple of times a week with my community. I lost that primary medicine. And then it was going out and walking every day, which was great. And then we had the fires and I couldn't go outside for like 10 days. And that really, for me, kind of forced me into this place of being like, okay, the universe is really putting me in a position for me to think about what truly matters. So I want to offer that to you today, to be just considering what truly matters, because I think when we're in a situation where the challenges abound, then it really brings up to us, it's like, well, what really matters? And how can I orient myself to what really matters, instead of to all the kind of annoyances or distractions or ways that we kind of manage our lives through things like television or food or shopping or whatever that might be, right? The ways that we kind of medicate ourselves away from stress. I know for me, I was kind of in that place the way a lot of us were the first couple of months of COVID. And then when I realized, wow, this isn't going away anytime soon. And I decided to really like clean up my diet, stop having any alcohol, really start exercising. And it really helped change my experience of my own body, my energy, and my life. And so it helped me get clear about what really matters. But what's embedded in that also is, what's my role? And how can I best fulfill my destiny? For those of you who are familiar with the Mayan calendar and this idea that 2020 was going to be this really big year where everything was going to change and we were going to have some kind of cataclysm. Well, it turns out that because of the shift from the Roman to the Gregorian calendar, I don't know when that was exactly, 1,000 years ago, I'm not sure, but whenever it was, there was a discrepancy between them, and it was a small discrepancy, but over many, many years, it added up to 8 years. So in fact, what we thought was 2012, I don't know about you, but when 2012 came and went, I kind of went, it was kind of like Y2K, not actually much happened, right? But it turns out it's actually 2020. What we thought 2012 is actually 2020. And so here we are with our challenges abounding. We're looking at what really matters. We're looking at, what's my role in this larger situation in the world? And how can I best fulfill my destiny, my potential? Right? I was born here for a reason. I came here with a contribution to make. Every single one of us did. And every single one of us came here to participate in what's happening with the world right now. And I want to just remind you of that, not to make you feel bad or shame you if you've been wanting to run away, because believe me, lots of people have been wanting to run away. I mean, I have friends who decided to move all the way across the country because they couldn't deal with the fires anymore. And I've been seeing that a lot, right? And whether you want to call that's smart, get out of burning Dodge, which there is a case to be made for that, and I do honor that, or whether that's trying to run away from a situation. I think we're getting to this place where we can't really be in denial the way that maybe we have been before about climate change, for example, or about what's happening with our economy, or what's happening in our political world. It's like everything, the volume is on everything has turned up. And in that situation, it can be easy for us to get disconnected from ourselves, and we can move into a state of overwhelm. We can feel uncertain. Those of us with open ajnas tend to feel uncertain anyway. And we seek certainty when, on one level, there really is no certainty. This is one of the conversations I've been having with my friends a lot lately, is just going, okay, well, we're just going to see what happens next. And even in the midst of being able to really go with the flow, we also have the opportunity to be dialing inside and to building our inner stability. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a lot about today, and give you some resources and some tools for that. Because when we go into uncertainty, when we feel unstable, when we feel a sense of overwhelm, that's usually because we're not connected with our own sense of self and our own purpose and our own sense of destiny enough. And we're allowing outer circumstances to be too influential on how we feel, in terms of what we can feel, what we can do, who we can be in the world. So for me, this is really the antidote. And this thing about, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I mean, you may be feeling this. I have sometimes, but I do feel like I've found a way to really grab a hold of my consciousness, and to manage my consciousness and direct it where I want to now. And that really mitigates overwhelm a lot. And sometimes we use overwhelm as an excuse. Now, a lot of times it's an unconscious excuse to just kind of go and pull the covers over our heads. But I think most of us know right now in our heart of hearts that it's time to be taking a different approach. So I want to propose to you that one of our main activities right now is to get stronger, to get clearer, and to be more on purpose. And I know that life purpose is a huge reason that people come for human design readings. We just did a chartathon on Wednesday morning that was focused on life purpose, and it was hugely popular. We could only get through half of the questions that were actually posed. And so I think this is where we go a lot when we have these kind of challenges, and the things that are happening on the world scale feel so big. We want to find our own ballast by finding our own purpose. And we want to be able to clear kind of the fog of so much noise that is coming to us from so many different places. And we want to build that resiliency. Karen has wonderful material on the 9 resiliency keys that if you have not dived into that, incredible material that she has, I would support you to do that. So the way that I think about this is about building your personal sovereignty. And sovereignty is a concept that I was first introduced to about 22 years ago now, and I have been working with ever since. And I was in a deeply transformative time in my life. I had left my job at Columbia University. I was in a network marketing company. I had become successful in that network marketing company, had actually doubled my income from Columbia in 15 months in that network marketing company. But I also knew that it was not my destiny to build my life inside of that network marketing company. And so I was looking at what is really true for me. And so I was working with a woman who was an energy healer and a shamanic practitioner. And she introduced me to this idea of sovereignty because she noticed that I was a little too susceptible to the influence of outer pressures and outer circumstances. And that what I really needed to do was to build my relationship with my inner landscape and my inner terrain, and to become sovereign of my own energy field, of my emotions, of my thoughts, and of my physical body. I needed to develop my sovereignty on all those different levels. And so I've been working with this, like I said, for 22 years now. And I've been working with clients on it. I've taught, it's been embedded in all of the programs that I've done, whatever the type of teaching that I've done. And I'm delighted that now more and more people are talking about sovereignty. And Karen has actually been talking a lot more about sovereignty in the last 6 months or so, 6 to 9 months. I've really noticed her starting to use that terminology, and I'm seeing it in many, many more people. And what I realized, and I'm writing a series of books on personal sovereignty, and what I realized in the process of really articulating and codifying what it is that I mean by personal sovereignty, I realized that it's feminine sovereignty. And when I say the word feminine, I don't mean that it's just for women. I think it might feel initially most accessible to women, but it is available for all genders, whether you're a cis woman, a trans woman, a non-binary person, if you identify as a man or a trans man. Whatever your gender identity is, feminine sovereignty is something that is available to you based on a series of principles, some of which I will share with you in a couple of minutes. And I invite you to check out what I'm going to be sharing with you today. And it's really, I call it feminine because many of these are qualities of the divine feminine. And we've been seeing the rise of the divine feminine coming up. I've been steeped in it for about 15 years now. And it's been accelerating in terms of its visibility and people practicing it and building out what it is, articulating it. And so these are principles that interface with a lot of our understandings about the divine feminine. And so that's why it's feminine sovereignty. Because of course we first thought of sovereignty as something that is having to do with kings and queens who are the sovereign, right? And they have sovereignty over their countries or their domains. And then we had the sovereign state, which the United States was the first sovereign state. And that moved from royalty into a collective, which is a democratic republic, which is what we have. We actually don't have a full democracy. We have a democratic republic. And so we have been working ever since to expand the promise of the sovereignty for all citizens and all people living in this terrain in this democratic republic. And that's one of the big things that we're looking at right now. And so for me, feminine sovereignty is an evolution of that, in which we really thought of the citizens of that democratic republic as they were sovereign if they were usually white men, initially if they were landed, and later on if they were just identified as white. And we're looking to really refashion that. Rethink it so that we can have a more equitable and inclusive world that we live in. And part of us being able to do that, in my view, is being able to develop our feminine sovereignty, which is a path. It's the one that I'm pursuing developing towards us becoming full citizens of a truly democratic society that is sustainable and equitable and inclusive, and has the highest good of all as the foundation. And when I say all, I also include our companion species and our beautiful planet, so that we're really looking at our interrelatedness and our interconnection, and realizing that we're all in this together. This is one of the principles of feminine sovereignty, is we're all in this together, and that there is enough for all of us when we can shift our consciousness towards this more benevolent and kind, visionary, and purposeful form of sovereignty. So human design plays a role in this, in that human design is always directing us back to ourselves, right? It's always directing us back to our own inner authority. And I love, this is one of the ways that Karen teaches about human design is that, yes, it's a system. Yes, we have understanding what it means. We're undergoing a revisioning of it in the evolutionary process Karen's been creating the quantum human design, and we're fortunate enough to be receiving her teachings about that. And at the same time, to release ourselves from the dogma that tends to accompany any strong philosophy. I experienced this with Waldorf education. I experienced it with macrobiotics. I was very macrobiotic for about 7 years and actually trained to be a macrobiotic counselor and chef. My kid was in Waldorf education for the first part of their school years. And so any strong philosophy can become dogmatic, and that has happened with human design in certain components. But in our world here, in Karen's world, and in this legacy, we're really seeing human design as an evolutionary force that is in its own process of becoming more and more. And a component of that is to realize that human design is always going to lead us back to our own inner knowing, our own inner authority. And that no matter what your type is, we all have an authority. I know that sometimes your printout might say no inner authority, but I don't actually think that that's accurate. It's not how I coach or how I teach my clients. I think everyone has inner wisdom. And one of the things I love about human design is that it provides us with many, many different ways of knowing. It shows us many different forms of intuition. It shows us how to tap into superconsciousness. And it shows us how to tap into the wisdom that's in the body that can help guide us, helps us move out of the thinking tower that we've all been programmed into believing that this is the only place where knowledge and truth comes from, is from logic, from reason, from analysis, from data, and so on. All of which can be valuable, but is only a part, and only a relatively small part, maybe 20-25% of the ways that we can know. And so human design is very disruptive to a lot of our conditioning in that way, but it's also very supportive of those of us who have always known that we were intuitive, had other ways of knowing that were maybe not validated in our families or schooling, or we didn't see it in the outer world. And so human design is always leading us back and providing us with a map to understand those qualities that we have, which are also key components of our own sovereignty and of our feminine sovereignty. Because if you even just think about this in terms of the way that we tend to polarize qualities into masculine and feminine, we'll generally put logical, reasonable, rational, analysis and data, it's all left-brained and it's all masculine. Whereas in the right brain, right, we've got creativity, we've got intuition, we've got imagination, and we've got feeling states, we've got emotions, and we tend to think of all of those as feminine, right? So part of rethinking sovereignty is to be bringing to the forefront a lot of these qualities that we have culturally, whatever we decide to do individually, but culturally we've tended to put into the feminine category. And so human design is just an enormous tool for us, both based on these kind of big issues and also looking like at our circuitry, looking at the knowing circuit, the sensing circuit, even the centering circuit, that these are all places that can give us new portals to understanding ourselves and developing our inner knowing. So let's take a look at a few pillars of feminine sovereignty. These are common to all of the 6 archetypes of feminine sovereignty that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And these are important parts of the book that I'm writing on feminine sovereignty. So I want to offer these to you today in a kind of sketch. We don't have time to dive into them super deeply, but I do want to give them to you in some things that you can take in, that you can start to mull over, that you can, maybe give yourself, take a look at, where you are regarding these pillars. Like, ooh, I've got that one. I work with that one, all the time. Or, you know, that's a really good idea, but I'm not on top of that one. I could use developing my capacity. And so one of the themes for me around feminine sovereignty is really about building our capacity in all of these different aspects of life, which is what's going to make us stronger. It's going to help us be clearer. It's going to help us to be more on purpose and to know our role and to be able to pursue and manifest our destiny. So these pillars of sovereignty, number one is to be a co-creator with the flow of life. I know any of us who have been in the metaphysical world, or even now in the place where spirituality and quantum physics meets, which is the sweet spot that Karen often teaches into, recognizes that we are a center of consciousness within the one life, or within the universe, or inside of the flow of life, right? We are a center of consciousness. And as such, we are constantly creating our experience. We're creating our perceptions. I'm sure you've heard that term, you create your own reality. I always like to remind people when they say that to say, yes, you create your own reality, but you don't do it by yourself. You do it with the flow of life. You do it with God. You do it with spirit, right? And so we're co-creators. And what we want to become aware of and really grab a hold of and master in the process of becoming sovereign is to deliberately create, right? To be creating purposefully rather than to be creating by default, which is what we do when we give into our fear and our doubt and our uncertainty. We allow ourselves to freak out for too long. I mean, let's face it, I think probably everybody has been freaking out at some point over the last 6 months, and that's okay. I mean, it's not that getting overwhelmed by a situation is going to totally be avoided. But the question is how quickly can you step back from that emotional overwhelm into, oh, excuse me, I think I'm going to sneeze. You know how that is, right? All right, we'll see if it comes. If we can step back, now I'm going to talk more about this towards the end, and get a clearer view of what's really going on, because a lot of times our survival strategies get activated, and then we're not purposefully creating, we're creating by default out of fear. And so one of the pillars of feminine sovereignty is to be the author of your own personal narrative, to be able to be the author of the story that you are living inside of, so that you are in command, that you're not at the mercy either of your survival strategies or of the people around you or of the outer circumstances. Pillar number two is to be emotionally intelligent. I think this is a topic that has been coming up more and more in our culture, which is great, because we have not had an emotionally intelligent culture at all. Our culture has been emotionally illiterate and dysfunctional. We've tended to have a lot of codependence, and a lot of suppression around our emotions. And those of you who are emotionally defined, you know how challenging that can be for you. If you've been in a place where you've felt the need to be suppressing your emotions or rejecting your emotions, you've been told your emotions are wrong. So for us to become emotionally intelligent so that we understand that our emotions are a vital aspect of our experience as human beings. They're actually a source of a tremendous power for us. They're part of our creative power, but they're also just a part of our how we experience ourselves in relationship to our own inner being, in relationship to other people, in relationship to the world around us. Like anytime you just go to the ocean and you go into a forest and you just feel the energy of those potent potent natural forces. You emotionally take that in, right? And so that's a potent force. And the same thing happens when we feel grief. When I learned that my friends were going to be moving across the country, I had this shock, and I really took in the opportunity to feel the grief. And I had a few really deep cries about that. And our ability to cry is really important because it's part of how we cleanse ourselves. It's how we open up to our vulnerability. It's how we crack our hearts open. I'm not quite sure where or why it ever became such a bad thing to cry. But it's part of our emotional intelligence as our ability to feel our grief as well as our joy and our delight. And for us also to be able to get a handle on our inner wounding, our triggers, our trauma, so that when we do get activated, that we're able to differentiate between what's going on inside of us and what's happening with an outer situation or with another person, so that we can take that and digest that and not be projecting our experience onto other people and making them bad and wrong, which is how honestly most of us were taught in our codependent families or schools or communities. So that's just a little thumbnail sketch of emotional intelligence. We need to become embodied, really coming fully down into the body and being vital. Even if you have some type of chronic illness or you have some kind of disability, we can all build our vitality. We can all become embodied. And it's one of the things I love about human design is it's really about being in the body and tapping into the body wisdom. I have spent the last 20 years in particular, but really even before that, pursuing many different somatic practices, including body tales and continuum movement and different forms of dancing and dance expression to really foster my embodiment and to be able to tap into the wisdom of the cells and the consciousness that's in our bodies. So this is a really important part of feminine sovereignty, because we have too often given away our bodies to doctors, for example, to other people, to our own despair or our depression, to bad food, to unhealthy environments, right? We've given away our embodiment and our vitality and our physical health. And so part of feminine sovereignty is being able to reclaim those aspects of our being. The next pillar is to know, her or their or his terrain. Like, what is mine to do? Where am I going to focus in this life? Because like I said, we can't focus on everything. I mean, no matter how much energy you have or how big your vision is, you can't focus on everything, right? And if we start to allow ourselves for our perception to be big in a way that's not helpful for us, that's when we get overwhelmed and we get discouraged and we start to feel like nothing we do matters. So we want to look at what our terrain is if we think of ourselves as a sovereign being, right? And we're sovereign of our life and we're sovereign of where we're going. We want to know what our terrain is. Like for me, teaching about and coaching and writing about feminine sovereignty is my terrain, right? This is my field. This is my zone of genius is in this area. And so I am focusing all of my attention here with human design as a huge component of it, right? And along with all of the other healing and personal growth modalities that I have learned, but they're all coming underneath the rubric of feminine sovereignty for me now. And so this is my terrain. So my question for you is, what is your terrain? And for you to carve out your terrain so that you know what your role is. What is the sphere of influence where your destiny lies? And that you get really focused on that and not get so pulled away into all these different things. Like one of you might be looking at really working on climate change. And where's going to be your role inside of climate change? Another one of you might be working on anti-racist work because that's really calling to you. Somebody else might be working in the political realm. You might be working with helping families who are having kids who are schooling at home now. And how do you help families to be able to manage the stresses and the challenges of that, and optimize the opportunities that are available with that? You know, some of you might be in a healing modality, and what is your terrain with that? So you don't try to do too many different things. And I don't mean like I'm telling you to do one thing, because I know you manifesting generators and those of us with the 34 defined, we are designed to have multiple projects. And so I have the 34 defined, so I honor that. So I'm not saying do one thing, but even if you're doing multiple things, to carve out your terrain in which you are active. The next pillar is excellent communication. And excellent communication is really based on emotional intelligence, and it's based on understanding that we are co-creators, and also our vitality and our embodiment. It's such a important piece, becoming excellent communicators. And I want to just emphasize there are two parts. One is when we draw on human design, our excellent communication is going to tell us when the timing is right. Because whatever we have to say that is important, it needs to be said at the right time and in the right place and to the right people. Because if we don't, it's either going to come across as wacky, or it's not going to be heard, or it's going to annoy other people. I have an open throat. And so this is something I've really had to learn in my life, is about right timing, right situations. So that's a key part of our communication. I also have learned, because I have 11 either hanging gates or electromagnetics going to my throat. So my throat has been and continues to be defined and activated in a positive way many, many, many times over, in many, many different situations. And that's become a real asset for me as a teacher, now that I understand that in human design. But the thing that's really made it work for me is this piece about timing. Then the other side of it that I want to emphasize is our need to be able to listen. Because sometimes when we think about communication, we're just thinking about what we're saying, right? Or how we're putting across our message. We're not paying enough attention to how we're receiving what other people have to say. We're not receiving what's important to them. We're not able to take that in. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. It is just developing the capacity to listen, to be able to receive someone else's point of view. I love the saying, there's a reason that God gave us one mouth and two ears, right? Because we need to listen twice as much as we speak. So think about that for yourself. And how are you? So if you tend to be the person who listens a lot but doesn't speak up, start looking for the right time to speak up. And if you're one of those people who talks a lot, see if you need to wait for more timing, or if you need to be learning to listen more, because you want to develop the full capacity of being an excellent communicator. And then the last piece here, and these aren't all of them, but these are the key ones I wanted to share with you today, have to do with being benevolent, right? A sovereign is benevolent. A sovereign is concerned for all, is concerned for all people and all beings. That's what a true sovereign does. We haven't had that many examples of true sovereignty in our kings and queens and in many of our leaders, but we have had a few. And this is one of the reasons that I undertook developing the 6 feminine sovereign archetypes that I'm going to show you in a minute, and then also connecting them to people in our world, so we could start looking at our models and our mentors that can help us to understand this. But sovereignty is always relational. It's not an individual thing. This idea that being sovereign means that you're an individualist and you're autonomous and you don't need anyone or anything. That is actually a distortion of sovereignty, because if you think about that, if you're really that way, what are you sovereign of? Right? You're always sovereign of something. I guess you could be sovereign of yourself, but even that, we always live in the world with other people, always. So sovereignty is always relational, about our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with other people, our relationship with our environment, our relationship with our world, right? It's always relational. And so the key quality we want to have with all of those relationships is benevolence, kindness, compassion, concern for the greater good of all. right? And so this is something that we all really want to cultivate inside of ourselves. And right now we live in such an incredibly polarized environment, particularly in the political sphere, whatever your orientation is. You know, we really need to find ways to move out of the victim, perpetrator, rescuer paradigm, the fighting, into something else that is more benevolent, and has the greater good. So what I'd love for you to do is just make some notes in the chat or in the comments on Facebook about which of these pillars resonated for you. And if you're like, wow, you know, this one I really feel like I've mastered, and this one I really need to work on. I would love to hear that from you. It's actually really helpful for me in my work. So you could, you know, do some energy exchange with me here by letting me know which of these have been helpful for you. Okay, I'm just going to take a sip of water and check our time.
Lael on Facebook says, I feel like I know my terrain falls under feminine sovereignty and women's health and being a midwife and understanding human design. I gotta get it. It disappeared. And understanding human design and pregnancy, but I keep coming up against the practical matters like money. I feel like I get close to something that lights me up, but then it costs money and I get in my head and turn away. How can I get over this hump?
Well, it
Would that
sounds
be
like,
one of the pillars then?
say that again, Cindy.
Would one of, I mean, she knows her sovereignty, but would focusing on one of the pillars, or she knows her terrain, maybe another.
So I would say if money is an issue for you, and is her name Lena? Is that right?
Lael.
Leah. Okay. Leah. Okay. Leah, I'm sorry if I
Oh,
mispronounced.
I'm sorry. Lael. Laile.
Okay, Leo. So what I would say is the area of your life where you're not sovereign is around your prosperity. Okay, you're not sovereign around your value. Anytime that people have recurring issues about not having the money that they really deserve, it means that there's somewhere in your inner terrain, there is inside your money story and your relationship to prosperity, to abundance, to resources, there's something distorted in there that you're not aware of or that you haven't healed or cleared. So that's what I would say. I've done lots and lots of work with people around their money story and they're owning their value. And you can take a look at the qualities of the will center and of the 4 different gates on the will center. You can see if you're open in your will center or if you're defined in your will center, and what your relationship to the fundamental qualities of the will center are, because that's where self-worth is, that's where value is, it's where our relationship to money is. And so I would say go and take a look at, you know, what you're defined there, whether it's gates or the center itself, or where you're open, and what your relationship to those different qualities are. The other thing that you can do is just do some journaling for yourself around your relationship with money. What did you learn about money from your parents or the people you grew up with? What did you learn about money from the family that you grew up in, or the community that you grew up in? And what are your beliefs about people who have money? Unfortunately, a lot of people who do healing work have a hidden devotion to poverty. They don't believe on a deep level, usually coming from their other lives, that it's not okay to charge money for healing work, or sometimes for spiritual work. So there's a lot there. And if I can support you any more about that, I do encourage you just to reach out to me. But anytime that you have an area of your life where you feel that you can tell there's a pattern that is disrupting your ability to feel empowered and influential and on purpose in your life, you know that there are inner walls that are in your way, and then you need to bring them to the surface and clear them. Okay, great. Just thinking about our time here. So what I want to do is I'm going to go through the rest of the material that I had, and then I'm going to come back to your comments. So keep putting them in there and we'll come back to them. Okay. So I'm just going to briefly introduce you to the 6 feminine archetypes. And then I have a special. So these are some of the images that I have developed around them. We have the wise woman, the visionary, the high priestess, the earth mother, the queen, of course, and the new world leader. And for you to get to know them better, I'm going to invite you. I developed a quiz called What's Your Feminine Sovereign Archetype? And Cindy, if you can pop this URL in the chat, that would be great. It's a very simple URL. It's just sovereignquiz.com. And it's a short little quiz. And when you, after you take it, you'll get a teaching. There's a video, and then you'll get a report a couple of days later. And then there's also a teaching about sovereignty and feminine sovereignty that you'll be able to get as of next week. After you take this quiz, it'll kind of put you in the sequence for that. And this will help you to identify which one of these you connect with more right now when you take the quiz. Now, let me also say that for many of us, we identify with more than one. That's certainly true for me. And so that's why I like to let people have just a little taste, at least, of what all of them are. So I'm just going to go through these kind of at lightning speed here. So our first one is the queen, of course. And so because queen is the archetype that we associate with sovereignty the most. But what we see in our current world is African-American women call each other queen all the time. And Beyonce, who is one of our models and mentors for feminine sovereignty, is known as Queen Bey, for example. So African-American women are really call each other queen a lot. And it has a different meaning when among African-American women than it does for white women or other women. And so it's a terminology that we see all the time. Like I have a friend who's now the queen of transformational retreats, and another friend who's the queen of evergreen launches. And I even saw one of the queen of your it was like of your toilet bowl. I mean, I know it was of your digestion or something. I mean, it was just bizarre. It's like showing up everywhere. So, but then a lot of us who have traced our ancestry back to the Celtic world are looking at the idea of sovereignty inside of the Celtic world and the Celtic queen. So that's why we have her here now. And so all of this is much more developed in the materials that I'll share with you, and then especially in my book. Then we have the high priestess, who is really connected to, she's plugged into super consciousness, and her role is to help us to be able to be initiated into a higher frequency, and to support all of us to get our own connection with super consciousness. So she's a very potent spiritual leader. Then we have the Earth Mother, who is really has an enormous heart, and she's the most tribal of all of the different. Actually, all three of those I just talked about. The Queen, the High Priestess, and Earth Mother are all tribal in the human design. I connect all of these with different aspects of the human design chart. This one is the most tribal. She resides in the defense circuit, and she has a huge heart, and she's all about making sure that the tribe has everything that they need, and she's really concerned about the earth, and she's often connected to the elements and to the seasons, and so she has a tremendous potency to help us to reconnect with our earth in ways that we haven't, and to open our caring and our compassion. Then there's the wise woman, who's the one I really relate to the most. Those of us with a 48 will really relate to the wise woman because this is where we really, we accumulate our knowledge, but then we also digest and integrate and express that knowledge through our life experience as well. So that's how we develop wisdom, is we marry our knowledge with our life experience, and that's what creates true wisdom. And so she's here to help us understand our history. She's here to understand multiple perspectives and to be able to move into a much larger understanding of who we are in the world, how we relate to each other, and how vast our world and how vast our universe is. Then we have the visionary, And visionary resides actually in the gate 38. She's in the place where we think about what is it that we really want to devote our lives to. What is, in traditional human design, we would call this the fighter, or what's worth fighting for. But I want to emphasize here that visionary is the part of us that can propel ourselves into the future, and to be future pacing, and to be creating positive futures of the world that we want to live inside of, and giving our emotional energy to that. And we do that inside of our own terrain. So like for me, I know that feminine sovereignty is something that's coming into being. I don't know that any of us have this fully developed inside of us, but I do see it as where we're going. It is kind of the paradigm of the positive world that I want to live inside of, and that I'm teaching to others who are also attracted to that. So this is a place where my relationship with visionary can be a support for that, so that we're able to put positive visions into the future rather than the apocalyptic ones that we too often tend to be sending out. And then we have the New World Leader. And the New World Leader is exemplified by a lot of different people. And this is a new archetype. The others are ones that have been with us for a long time, have been in the collective unconscious for a long time. But the New World Leader is the one who is really more of a collective energy in human design, and is able to see how the different tribes relate to each other, and is able to see a bigger picture that includes the patterns and the systems, and how energy flows, and where the gaps are and the blocks are, and where we need to strengthen things and where we need to retool things. And so this New World Leader also, unlike all of the sovereigns, has a positive vision of what's possible and is working towards that. Okay, so all of the archetypes, like all archetypes, have an awakened aspect, a shadow aspect, and a disempowered aspect. And so in the material that you'll get when you take the quiz and you enter into this sequence, you'll learn all about the awakened aspect, the shadow aspect, and the disempowered aspect of whatever the archetype is that you resonated with the most. And it'll give you some tools to understand, oh, wow, I'm in the shadow aspect of this right now. I didn't realize, like my need to be right, for example, is really up. Uh-oh, that's part of my shadow aspect. Or my desire to control things, that's part of my shadow aspect. Or my need to, I'm just giving away my power and trying to put other people in charge. That's my disempowered aspect, right? So it's important for us to understand that archetypes have a kind of life force of their own, and that they have like all of these different aspects. So again, when you take the quiz, here's the URL again. You'll get all of that for your particular archetype, but then in the sequence, you'll learn about it with all of the different archetypes. And the people have been experiencing this so far, that about 100 people take the quiz so far, because it's kind of new, have been really, really appreciating getting to see this, because it's illuminating many aspects that they didn't have, they maybe weren't able to articulate for themselves. They kind of felt and recognized immediately, and they were able to have some language around it and some strategies and tools that they didn't have before. Okay, so there's one more piece of content that I want to share with you. And this is steps that you can take right away. These are all, well, some of them are based in human design. And so one is to check your openness. Where are you open? Where might you be being influenced by outside forces in a way that is not beneficial to you? Now, the thing that I want to say about your openness, and I think I vary from maybe even most human design specialists in this area, but this is my experience, is that your openness, you do not necessarily have to be at the mercy of other people in your openness. It can become a huge asset and ally to you, and you can develop huge capacity in your openness. But if you haven't actually done that, like for me, I have only one gate in the whole sensing circuit. And yet I'm pretty masterful in the sensing circuit, in the qualities of the sensing circuit, because I've developed them. I decided that I wanted to develop them long before I ever came to human design. So I've developed my sensuality, my embodiment, my ability to feel, my sensing, my felt sense. I developed through advanced meditation. So I did all of this even before I knew what it was, and I'm pretty masterful in that area. So what I want to say to you is to check your openness and just to see, wow, am I, really feeling like I don't know what my direction is, because my open chi is being thrown or is being really activated right now. Do I feel like I can't say anything because my throat is open? Do I feel like I've just got so much pressure to get things done because I have an open root? Just as a few examples. And then when you know that that's your openness, you can ask yourself, what can I do to become more masterful about this energy? So again, this is about mastering your consciousness, right? Okay, so that's one piece. If you're emotionally defined, check your emotional wave and really give yourself a lot of tender, loving care when you're on the low side of your wave. And don't be trying to beat yourself to do things when you're feeling melancholy, because it's not going to help. And so just really check that emotional wave if you're emotionally defined, and take care. Step back and assess what's going on. Too often we kind of are too like this up close to situations, and we can't really see any solutions when we're so close like that. This is the kind of proverbial, climb the highest tree in the forest so you can see the whole forest rather than just, running into one tree after the next. Okay, step back and really assess and ask yourself, for example, if you're afraid, just really say, is there a real and present danger right here, right now? Because most of the time there isn't. Most of the time there's a fear about what could happen, or a worry, a projection into the future about what might happen. Okay. And so you want to really look at that and then pull yourself back in to this present moment. There's no real and present danger here right now. Like even like those days when I didn't go outside because the air quality was so bad and I knew that there were these massive fires, I was like, there's no real and present danger right here. I am not in danger, right? So as long as I stay inside with my air filters, I'm fine. So you really want to do that. If you've been watching a lot of media, plugged into a lot of media, maybe you should have a media fast. Take a few days off. It's going to be okay. The issues that are there today are going to be there in a few days. There may be a few things that change, but you can do a media fast. Sometimes people get addicted to the challenges, and the dopamine that you get from the stress of checking out the challenges. I know that might sound weird. I did a whole interview with Dr. Valencia Ray, which is over on my page, where we talked about this. So, and she really recommended a media fast if you find that watching the media and partaking in the media is a little too much for you. Journaling, really looking at for the woman who was talking about her relationship to money, journaling about your relationship with money, journaling about anything that you're becoming aware of is in your way. Also, journaling about the future vision of the world that you want to live in. Start putting your attention there. My sneeze is back. Oh. You know how that is. Okay. So, and journaling could also be, it could be in a voice memo, like you go for a walk and you just talk. It could also be on video if you want to look at yourself. Sometimes that's really helpful. So it doesn't literally have to be writing. I'm a big fan of writing. I write every day. I write pages every day. But I'm a writer, so not everybody's like that. But it's really great for getting in touch with your inner landscape. And then the last thing I'm going to say is to build your capacity. Build your capacity. And the reason that I am doing this work on the archetypes and on feminine sovereignty is everything that I do inside of that is about helping you build your capacity. And I think you got an idea about some of the things that I meant around that in the pillars of feminine sovereignty. The last thing I want to share with you is I decided, I was thinking through all of this today, and I wanted to just make a special offer to those of you, if you're attracted to what I've been teaching, you want to connect with me a little bit more. This is a special that I offer every now and then. It's not on my website. It's not a general offer, to do a half-hour reading with me for $147. That's, significantly less than what I usually charge for a reading. It is a focused reading on, so for example, it could be on your money story, or it could be on one of the pillars in feminine sovereignty, or some challenge that you have. And we get to really dive into your chart. We look at how you can develop your sovereignty, how you can build your capacity in that particular area. And then I give you some suggestions and concrete ways that you can do that. So by the time that you leave, you have some assignments, if you will, or invitations, or tools that will help you to develop your sovereignty based in your human design. So Cindy, if you can just post that URL in the chat, and on Facebook. I know you always do that. So that would be great. This is only good through September 30th, through next week. It's just like 5 days. So if you want to do it, go ahead and do it right away. We can schedule you a little bit later, but I'm not going to run this special for much longer. I'm running it that long just because I know a lot of people watch the recording of this. And so I wanted to make it that available to them as well. Okay, Cindy, do you have that URL? Because I want to stop share here.
I did, and it's posted both on Facebook and in the
You know what? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit. You're pretty quiet.
Can you hear me?
Oh, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. So it's posted both in the chat and on Facebook.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I know I took that whole hour, but I'm okay. I want to just see what people are saying, and if we have questions. Is that okay with you, Cindy? Can you hang on for
fine.
a few more minutes?
What I wanted to say is we got some questions I do want to bring up to you. Is the sovereign quiz is actually, and I checked it, it does come up as having a security issue. So it gives you a warning and you have to click through. So I clicked through, so I had the
oh, you know what? That's because it's got an HTTPS. So it should just be HTTP, and then it won't do that. Whenever you get one of those, just so you guys know, whenever you get one of those, it's because the URL you're using is not a secure URL. The website itself is secure. You can also find it at.
I already posted the other one.
You posted the other one. So I'm sorry about that.
I pushed through.
Okay.
I found it.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about that, you guys. So it's starexperience.com/sovereign quiz. You can get there also.
Here I was one of your 100 people that took the quiz.
Did you take it yet, Cindy?
Oh, I took it earlier when you posted, because you sent it out to your email list.
Oh yeah, how did you like it?
Oh, I liked it. I'm a visionary, like Dr. Valencia said she was also a visionary.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Did you want me? We had a couple questions or comments that came in on Facebook.
Yeah.
Before the break, Terry had mentioned that I'm an MG63. I found I'm good at co-creating with the flow. I'm just confused or unsure of my terrain, as COVID and spirit has shown me my terrain is changing. How would you suggest to be clearer on what my terrain is changing into?
Okay, great question. And I think you're in a really good company with that. Lots of people are finding that they need to pivot. They need to change the work that they're doing or where they're living or whatever that is. So I will just lead you back to your human design for one thing. And I don't know if you've had a human design reading that can help you to get in touch with your life purpose, what you're here to teach about, what your life lessons are, what your blessings are, all of that. So I would encourage you to get a reading with me or with somebody else that can help you get in touch with all of that. So that's one thing. The other is, some of the things that I mentioned here, just like journaling, doing creative projects where you're tapping into your imagination and into your right brain and your intuition, whether that's drawing or whether it's writing or it's singing or dancing. And it's not that you're necessarily going to be drawing and then what your next thing is going to pop out while you're drawing, but what it does is it opens up that right part of your brain, and it opens up the field of possibility. It helps you connect into that quantum field that Karen's always talking about. And then in my experience, what happens then is you can receive the messages from your inner being or from your angels and guides, from your destiny, if you will, or the flow of life, however you like to think about that. And so you also want to look at, where's the intuition in your chart? And how can you cultivate that? We all have intuition, and we all have intuition that's available to us, even if it's not defined in our charts. So that's what I would say. And if you want have a follow-up to that, just go ahead and pop it in the comments.
Okay. Some of our people watching have already taken the quiz right now.
Oh, great.
Facebook Creatrix Christine says, is it just me, or does having a completely open G make it super stressful to take personality tests? Everything seems to be, it depends. So she said she got to like question 3 of the sovereign quiz and almost had come apart.
Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. So
And
here, yeah, go ahead. Is there more?
Georgie also said on Zoom, I just looked at the first question and can't get past it. I have at least one of the descriptors in each of the archetypes.
Yeah. Well, see, this is why I am also going to be providing to everyone information about all the archetypes. So here's the thing. None of us is one archetype, right? None of us is just one archetype. We all experience multiple archetypes all the time. And so the thing is we resonate with some more than others. And in looking at these feminine sovereign archetypes, you want to just kind of be like, what of this works for me? Like, I know people who are such queens. I mean, they're such a queen, but they also have a priestess that's in there, right? Like, they've got a priestess that's in there, and they've got a visionary that's in there too. But the queen, it's like how they present. Most of them also have like the 45 defined in their charts, right? Because 45s, they have that kind of energy. So it's not that I'm trying to get you to fit yourself into a box with one of the archetypes. It's more about their different forms of empowerment. Their different forms of being in the world. They have different high qualities. And so a part of the experience of working with the archetypes is being able to pull from them and see what works for you. But it's also about being able to reveal the unconscious, disempowered aspects and shadow aspects that maybe you didn't realize were actually a disempowering thing. Maybe you thought, for example, the way you always try to take care of everyone is part of, you thought that was an empowered statement, but or strategy. But usually when people try to take care of everyone, that's a disempowered state, because you're running yourself ragged. A lot of healers fall into this. Now, for the woman with the open G, God bless you. And I just want to say that you can develop real mastery in your G. Okay. The thing is that you need to do that purposefully, because if you don't take it on and do it purposefully, then you are going to feel the influence of things outside of yourself. Okay. And so, like I said, with me, with the sensing circuit, I decided to take that on long before I knew human design, that I wanted to develop my felt sense. I wanted to develop my sensuality. I wanted to develop a finely tuned relationship with my inner being through my body. And so I have a lot of facility there. Well, you can do the same thing with your G center. You can develop your capacity for love. You can develop your sense of who you are. You could go and take a look at all, and this is actually one of the things in a program that I'm going to be offering soon, is you could go and look at all of the 6 archetypes, and you could go, I like this and this and this. And I'm going to put that together into my own self-concept. And I'm going to develop my own code of who I am. I'm going to develop my own sense of my own personal feminine sovereign self. Okay. And then you focus on that and you build it and you use your power of intention in order to bring that into being. So I hope that's helpful for you.
That was Creatrix Christine, and she said she has the 8 defined in a wide open G. So she's learning to embrace the gift over the shadow.
Good.
Yeah. We did have a question, and she said, oh my God, thank you. We did have a question from Jennifer on Facebook. What gates might be most connected to the wise woman and the high priestess? Because often, as you were going through, you had, for some of the archetypes, you had told us what gate it might show up in, or what?
Yeah, well, the wise woman is associated with the gate of wisdom, which is the 48, right? And Cindy and I both have the 48. We're such 48s. So so the 48 is all about, in traditional human design, it's the depth or the well. It's, people who have this defined in their charts, how we love research, we love knowledge, we love learning, we're voracious learners. And over time, as we grow and we develop, if we don't just stay in our heads, and so this is a process in the arc of transformation, which is also something I teach inside of feminine sovereignty, is we need to take information, right, that we just get in books or in trainings or from other people, and we need to put it together with life experience. And over time, the more and more that we do that, we create wisdom. So wisdom isn't just about information, and it's not even just about knowledge. It's about marrying our life experience, taking what we've learned, and then building that through how we've engaged with life into a deep wisdom. So that's the 48. The high priestess is primarily associated with the 51, which is it's traditionally the gate of shock. I also like to call it the gate of the priest or the priestess. That whole channel can be considered that. It's initiation. It's about initiating us into higher consciousness. I also have this defined in my chart. I really relate to the 51. But the priestess also associated with the 61, which I also have defined in my chart, which is how we plug into super consciousness through the knowing circuit. So there's a variety of different places, and that's the body of work that I'm developing right now.
Well, Jennifer said, thank you. I'm very intuitive, but recently felt stuck about myself. So it goes on to say, my spleen is open except for the gate 50. So does that mean anything to you? Thank you.
The spleen is open except for the
gate
50.
50.
Mm-hmm. Well, the gate 50 is related with the Earth Mother. So it's a nurturing energy. It's a teaching energy. It's an energy about caring for the tribe, passing on values, standards of behavior. I also have that defined in my chart. You see how I relate to these, because I have so much of it defined in my chart. And so, so that is associated with Earth Mother. So that would be one of the archetypes I would take a look at for yourself. And a lot of times, if you don't have the 27, that's defined, that's the other half of that channel, that can be associated with codependence, which is one part of the shadow side of the Earth Mother. So you can be looking at that also if you tend to get pulled in that, because in that, the other side, the mate of the hanging gate is an energy that we are always kind of looking for and amplifying. And so you might want to just look at what your relationship to that is. And it is part of either the shadow side or the disempowered side of the Earth Mother.
Okay. That was great. I do remember, I haven't quite found it, but someone asked what sort of, you had mentioned that you did dancing as part, and they had asked about what type of dancing do you do to help with your spiritual practice, or that was one of the things that you had mentioned at the earlier part.
Yeah. So I, for 20 years, have been part of what's generally called the conscious dance movement or conscious dance community, which is now a global phenomenon. It was much smaller 20 years ago when I was first introduced to it. But it's really based in free-form dancing, and it's an invitation for us to move from the inside, to move any way that we feel drawn to express ourselves. It's not at all about taking a form and then embodying and expressing a form like you do in modern dance or in ballet or in tango or anything like that. It doesn't have steps associated with it. It's definitely about the inner experience and the outer expression. It's generally done barefoot in no alcohol, no drug environments, to DJ'd music. Sometimes it's done to live music. It's, ecstatic dance, for example, lives there. Five Rhythms lives there. Soul motion. These are all part of the kind of conscious dance movement. So I have done all of those and more. And so they're all really about self-expression and healing and our ability to move energy. I know for me, I move a lot of energy when I dance. I have a lot of energy, and I also have the right angle cross of tension is my incarnation cross. So I have a lot of tension and power. I also have my Chiron's in the 30. So I just have a lot of intensity. So I need to move a lot of energy on a regular basis, or I get kind of tweaked and I can be unkind to myself and others. So I have learned that I really need to move a lot. And unfortunately, all of those environments I don't really have anymore, or I have on Zoom, which is not the same. So it's been a real challenge for me, and I've had to find other ways to do that. So I've started riding my bike again. I do a lot of biking. I do hiking. I put physical challenges out there for me. I used to do a lot of Pilates at my gym. Can't get to the Pilates machines right now. So, that's that, and you have to find what works for you. What helps you to move energy. I breathe a lot. I do breathing practices. It's another way that I move energy. So I think that with the heightened intensity that we're all living in right now, and the incredible, like I said, challenges abounding, we have to find ways to continually be moving our energy. Otherwise, we either get kind of like this, or we find ourselves like eating sugar or drinking alcohol or doing other drugs, or whatever, yelling at our family, just like, so take care of your energy. This is why, energy management, your embodiment and your vitality are key pillar of feminine sovereignty.
Well, that was a great answer. And wow, I didn't realize we had so much in common between our charts.
We do, Cindy.
I think that's most of the I think you've covered most of the questions.
Okay.
There was
Great. All right. Well,
commenting, telling me great.
So what I'll do is I'm going to take a look at the chat later, and I will also take a look at the comments on Facebook, and I'll go in and just make some comments there as well. You can find me on Facebook. I have a personal profile. I also have the Sovereignty by Design Facebook business page, where I do either an interview or a teaching every Wednesday. And then I also have a group. And so a Sovereignty by Design Facebook group. So you can come and participate in that if you want to do that. And you can find me at Sovereignty by Design. And I invite you, if you're drawn, to come and do a reading with me. I would love to do that. And I can't wait to hear about your experience with the quiz. And just know this is a body of work that I'm developing. So if you've taken the quiz, you'll be, in my community as being interested in this topic. So I'll be continuing to be providing you with more opportunities, more trainings. We created these beautiful reports. My assistant, she kind of went over the top with these reports on each one of the archetypes. So you'll be getting one of those probably early next week. They're just gorgeous, depending on what archetype that you decided to that you resonated with the most. All right, well, thank you, Cindy. I so appreciate you. You're always such a great support and host. And I want to thank Karen Curry Parker, my mentor and my friend, who has really helped me so much in human design and has helped bring human design out to so many of us. And thank all of you who made the time to be here today, and those of you who are going to be watching the recording later. Many, many blessings and much love for now.